Hello and welcome to the big picture. In the seesaw relations between India and Pakistan, another significant move to bring the ties back on track is being attempted. The scheduled talks between the National Security Advisors of the two countries, Ajit Doval and Sartaj Aziz, is scheduled for Monday, August 25th. The decision to hold talks at this level, one may recall, was taken at Ufa in Russia last month when the Prime Ministers Narendra Modi and Nawaz Sharif met. As the preparations for talks are on, this morning witnessed some unusual action in Kashmir when the Hurriyat leaders were taken into custody and then released later, though the hardliner Syed Ali Shah Gilani is said to be still under house arrest. Meanwhile, this has cast a shadow on the Monday meeting with speculations over the arrest and release. However, what is it that the two NSAs will be discussing during the meeting? Will this meeting lead to improved relations between the two countries? We will discuss all this today with Rakesh Sood, former ambassador, Rana Banerji, former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat and an analyst, Priyanka Singh, Associate Fellow, IDSA, Vinod Sharma, Political Editor, Hindustan Times, and on the phone line from Islamabad is Imtiaz, Senior Journalist and Political Analyst. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sood, this meeting which is scheduled on Monday, hopefully it will come through despite all the, problems which we seem to have had this morning in Kashmir. Do you think they have an agenda?
Oh, certainly. I think it is quite clear that there is an agenda. Now, to the extent that both sides share the same agenda, that is a different point. But yes, we have made it very clear that we have an agenda, and the agenda, very simply, is terrorism-related concerns.
As far as India is concerned?
Absolutely.
What do you think Pakistan will have?
Pakistan, as you know, has maintained that they have certain concerns also with regard to their allegations of Indian interference in their internal affairs, whether in Balochistan or with some of the extremist elements. And I'm sure they are going to raise that. And in recent times, Sartaj Aziz has also said that he would also raise the issue of Kashmir and perhaps other related issues.
Okay, let's get Mr. Imtiaz Gul on this. Imtiaz, what is Pakistan's agenda in this meeting?
Well, I think Pakistan has a very clear agenda of restating its position that it has taken for quite a few years. Number one is basically restating what it thinks of Kashmir, and also I think underlining the need for resumption of a normal dialogue between the two countries without any preconditions.
That's it?
Well, I think under the current circumstances, you cannot expect both sides to go beyond beyond the reassertion of their stated positions because of the situation that in a democratic country, the government is preventing basically the political leaders from meeting with the National Security Advisor from another country. And I think this basically underlines the hard position that the Indian government has taken. And in addition to that, whatever we hear, these mutual bilateral allegations of unprovoked firing from both sides. So I don't think that the environment is conducive enough to expect anything substantial from these talks.
Okay, that's interesting. Rana Banerji, would you agree with that? Atmosphere, is it conducive? One. Second thing is that, the earlier rhetoric which we used to hear, terror and talks cannot be held at the same time.
You see, the UFA decision to have a meeting was welcome in the sense that the engagement process had started again, or at least a schedule had been specified. But the statement was perceived to be very one-sided in Pakistan. And this created a lot of pressure from the domestic audience to the establishment there. So they had to go the extra mile backwards to insist that there is really no departure from the existing position of Pakistan. After that, there's been a lot of acrimony, be it arising from the terrorist incidents in Gurdaspur and in Udhampur, and the cross-border firing, the scale of it, the escalation of it. So the build-up to the NSA level talks has been very acrimonious. Right. So I think Mr. Gul has put it rightly that it would be unlikely to yield anything and expectations should be lowered.
Expectations are...
But I would like to stress that even if the process is continued, I think it would be a step forward.
Yes, Priyanka, you know, there were terror and talks cannot go together hand in hand. You know, all these things were said earlier. But in this kind, as Banerji rightly put it, in this acrimonious atmosphere, the talks are being held is something, and the NSA level talks is supposed to be for the first time it's happening. So you expect, you know, the talks to happen in a conducive atmosphere, in an atmosphere where, because there are already, you know, speculations about the NSA meeting the Hurriyat leaders, whether he will meet before the talks or after the talks. This also is a matter of speculation.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, you know, like what the government of India has done now, I mean, it is in stark contrast to what it did in last August 2014. I mean, it called up the talks because of Pakistan engaging with the separatists and all. But
similar situation,
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but obviously, you know, like... I think it's also India is kind of, you know, like India is also trying out options. And now in the current scenario, it feels that, you know, like we can probably go ahead with the talks, talk it out and let's see, I mean, how things can be taken forward. And about the atmospherics, you know, like, of course, there has been ceasefire violations and everything, and there has been a series of provocations from the Pakistani side. But I think India has shown some kind of a determination this time to kind of that we are going to talk because, you know, like we have faced allegations from the international community also that India, you know, like it's not committed towards peace talks and everything. And now I think that perception would probably change.
Vinod? You know, there is this, as Priyanka pointed out, about the international perceptions. Some people, some leaders in India also are saying that these talks are being held under international pressure. Would you agree with that?
Well, the decision to have the dialogue was taken on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization is slightly wary of members who become their full members with bilateral disputes. You know. And this was pointed out by the head of a Central Asian Republic to President Putin then itself. But that apart, you know, Girish, remember, it was on the 19th of August 2014. We are into August. Today is 20th. That the previous round was called off on the issue of Hurriyat, interacting with the Pakistani ambassador here.
And we have the same situation now.
And then the talks were scheduled for 25th. This time they are scheduled for 24th, 23rd, 24th. So there is a sense of deja vu, but I would like to sort of beat that sense down. I'm sure this dialogue will go on. But may I point out that the basic architecture for this dialogue has been flawed. When the negotiations were called off on the 19th of August 2014, there was a reason which India adduced to it. It was unilateral, that is accepted. Because these things have to be sorted out, which are conventions, precedents, which you have to change the precedent, then you have to sort them out in back channels. But that perhaps didn't happen. Unfortunately, the same sticking point, which had sort of destroyed the peace process in the first instance, has become a big issue again. So how is it that the two prime ministers or the two interlocutors at the official level did not come to an understanding on this issue?
Absolutely.
Because this was the issue which was the major sticking point, you know, in August 2014. The same issue has arisen. So from that, I guess that there was indeed international pressure, and this understanding to resume NSA-level dialogue was put together under duress, kind of. But at the same time, I would say that today, it is India's good opportunity as a wronged party to the negotiations to bring that up because the dialogue is on terrorism. Now, you were saying terrorism and talks can't go together.
I am not saying that. This has been the rhetoric.
Earlier it was said.
Yeah.
You know, the interpretation was that talks on terrorism to fight terrorism should continue regardless of whether the regular dialogue is happening or not. And in this case, there is no regular dialogue. It is a dialogue to discuss terrorism and also to be followed by, hopefully, by interaction between DGMOs and the BSF on the question of border. The violations of ceasefire on the border.
Okay.
So I think that for India, it's an opportunity to put before Pakistan all the evidence that they have of their involvement on our side of Kashmir and also in Punjab.
Okay.
And this opportunity should not be missed.
Okay. Mr. Sood, this Hurriyat problem which Vinod is talking about, today what happened in Kashmir, arresting them first and then releasing them, why there is so much of confusion? Why do you think this happened?
Well, clearly, as you said, I think it reflects a little bit of a knee-jerk kind of a reaction. But let me just step back and say that I don't think this dialogue is taking place under international pressure. However, what I would say is that the dialogue between India and Pakistan addresses different constituencies. It addresses Pakistan certainly as a direct person, as a direct entity that is involved in the dialogue. But the dialogue also addresses other constituencies, whether it is Western countries, whether it is SCO members like Russia and China, as Vinod pointed out. And we've just seen there is an editorial in the New York Times on Kashmir and the line of control. So we are addressing different constituencies when we undertake this dialogue. Now, last year...
So you are saying that it's not necessarily under pressure.
But I think what has happened is that there is... the Modi government has certainly realized one thing, that merely calling off the dialogue is not something that serves its overall foreign policy agenda. And so therefore, I think Prime Minister Modi went out of his way. It was made quite clear even before he went to Ufa for the SCO summit, that this time there would be a meeting between him and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Now, if you recall, before that in November, he had gone to Kathmandu for the SAARC summit. And if you remember, the very vivid kind of visual image that came out of that was that he was reading his documents and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was walking by. Now, it was a different kind of a visual that emerged from Ufa. And the statement, as Mr. Banerji also pointed out, the statement at Ufa, which was, in my personal view, over-analyzed and over-interpreted, perhaps, by media on both sides of the border, planned for, in other words, it was actually a very simple statement. But because of the over-analysis, it kind of got loaded with expectations and led to certain corrective actions, as it were. But now, of course, we have had other developments. The developments in Gurdaspur, the developments in...
Exactly.
The developments in Srinagar, which have all served to cast a shadow, which only shows that any dialogue between India and Pakistan requires a very careful media handling.
And it cannot be expected to happen under very peaceful conditions.
I think...
And these kind of situations on the border and things like that are expected to happen when they...
These are provocations, and we have seen in the past also, we have seen many times that when there is an attempt to raise the level of dialogue, or there are enhanced expectations from dialogue on either side, that there are these provocations that take place.
So there is a change. So would you agree with that? There is a change in stance as far as the Indian government is concerned from what they did last year, from what the kind of stand they took last year to now?
Certainly. I mean,
so there is more pragmatism now, or what is it?
Perhaps. But I think we have to look at it in the context of the overall foreign policy agenda which Prime Minister Modi is trying to project. Because what is he trying to do? He's trying to project a certain neighborhood policy. You saw that referred to even when he went to UAE recently.
Yeah.
He's also trying to project a certain policy vis-a-vis the major powers, and that includes United States, China, Japan, Russia, and so on. So there is a certain projection of foreign policy, and in that, not talking to an important neighbor like Pakistan is something that doesn't quite gel. Now, that shift has certainly taken place, and we have to look at both August and November, as I said last year, and compare that to Ufa this year, and now the level of talks.
Okay, Imtiaz, you know, last year, as Vinod Sharma was pointing out very vividly, you know, the dates all match almost. last year there was this provocation because of which the Indian government decided to cancel the foreign secretary level talks. Why is it that Pakistan has again come out with this provocation about the Hurriyat leaders? You know, hasn't there been any kind of a discussion at the leadership level in Pakistan that this could again, you know, if not you know, the talks getting disturbed, at least it will cast a shadow on the talks?
Well, I think this is something that Pakistani leaders have been doing, and I don't think that any government would be wise, any political, democratically elected government, to stop some of its opposition political leaders from meeting with countries from the neighborhood. So I think this is again a very brinkmanship-like attitude. Somehow, I think all after hearing what other guests are saying, I would say that the Indian government shall have to basically stop behaving like a teacher, who is trying to dictate the students a certain policy. It's right now about two different countries, all right, with two different histories, two different agendas. But if there is a need for discussions between the two countries, as has already been pointed out in major Western capitals, including London, Washington, then I think there should be no conditions, and somehow the Modi government shall have to come down from its elevated position. That's, of course, it's very good for India to be on a higher plateau, but this doesn't mean that it deals with Pakistan as a country, as a subset of its neighborhood.
Okay, Mr. Banerji.
Yes,
one is about, first I want you to address the issue of Hurriyat, you know, how it has been handled now, and what kind of a shadow it will cast, and second thing is what Imtiaz is saying.
Well, actually the Hurriyat thing, I view it as a storm in a teacup. It should not be allowed to, you know, cast a shadow on the talks at all. It's a separate thing. And Hurriyat leaders have had access to the Pakistani High Commission people here in the past as well. And when that decision was made many years ago, it was a considered decision, and it reflected well on our overall democratic credentials. So when last year this particular decision was taken to send whatever message, as Ambassador Rakesh Sood has mentioned, perhaps it indicated a certain assessment of red lines which could be laid down, from which the present government now seems to have retreated. In fact, if the Pakistani media of today is to be believed, this was a very deliberate decision which was taken yesterday in a joint meeting where the Pakistani Prime Minister and the Army Chief were there, along with Mr. Sartaj Aziz and several other important ministers of the Nawaz Sharif cabinet. So it is a deliberate decision to ask the High Commissioner to invite the Hurriyat or for a social gathering. And I think they have done this for this very precise purpose, which Mr. Gul pointed out very obliquely and in a very diplomatic way, that it was to perhaps convey to India that Pakistan would not expect India to behave like a teacher, as he put it. So I think this realization also has to come to our, diplomatic interlocutors. And the sooner it comes, the better.
Okay, that's interesting. Priyanka, it was some of the critics of these talks, people who are making comments on this, including some leaders, are saying that this is one talk where both countries want to, do not want these talks, but do not want to break it also. Do not want to take the responsibility of breaking it. Is that the impression which you also get? I would like Mr. Sood also to reply, to answer that.
I really don't agree with the thing because, in terms of the context of these talks, I think India is in a win-win situation. Why I'm saying so is because of a series of ceasefire violations. Secondly, India has kind of forged a strategic partnership with the UAE, and that concerned terrorism. And thirdly, these terrorist attacks at Udhampur and Gurdaspur. So, I mean, I don't, if you look at the context, I think India, things look very positive for India because India is in a position to put across its point very emphatically before the Pakistan. and say that, like these are instances, where Pakistan's complicity has kind of come out very openly. And I think what India is planning to do is to kind of ask Pakistan to look at a roadmap. I mean, how they are planning to kind of deal with terrorism in that sense.
I think we will learn.
This is what the former Kashmir Chief Minister says.
I know, but I think we will learn how to manage the dialogue with Pakistan better. Or shall I say this government, because there is a shift from the previous year's position, as has been pointed out by all the others as well. Within this parameter, we will also need to figure out how are we going to manage the dialogue, how are we going to manage the expectations, how are we going to manage the outcomes, how are we going to manage the messaging that we are going to give to Pakistan and, as I mentioned earlier,
rest of the world,
to other key players that we want to convey a message to in terms of the efforts that we are making vis-a-vis Pakistan. So there is a multiplicity of layers in terms of how we address this issue. This issue can no longer be addressed in having the talks and calling off the talks. The current Pakistani attempt, as it were, as Mr. Banerji pointed out, the meeting between the army chief and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and other advisors was clearly an attempt to probe us, to see how far we would go. Would we call off the talks? Would we not call off the talks? I think it is just as well that we have not fallen into the trap. Fair enough. But at the same time, we are on a learning curve. This is not a one-shot dialogue. It cannot be a one-shot dialogue. I don't think we are going to resolve the terrorism issue with one meeting between the national security advisors. So we have to look at it as a long-term process that we have to also be able to manage on terms that are favorable to us.
Vinod, what are the terms which are favorable to us and this?
Look, I tell you one thing. There is a tendency, ever since there was a regime change, to play to the gallery. Now, you can't play to the gallery on a serious dialogue process as with a country like Pakistan. We saw post-Myanmar a whole lot of lavish statements coming from certain functionaries of the government, which did not reflect well on the sagacity of Indian foreign policy establishment. We are not a rogue state. We are not a warmongering state. India got the position that it holds today in the Committee of Nations because it has consistently proved itself as a responsible nuclear power. And we have to continue to have that image. Now, on the Hurriyat question, may I say that if, you see, today it's a changed situation, Girish. BJP is in power in Kashmir. It is part of an elected coalition in Kashmir. So, of course, I would understand when the BJP stands up and questions the legitimacy of Hurriyat because they don't even contest elections under the Indian Constitution. So, as per Pakistan's own formulation, that the settlement of the Kashmir issue has to be to the satisfaction of India and Pakistan and as per the aspirations of Kashmiris. The question we must raise in the regular negotiations with Pakistan is that how do you consider Kashmir, Hurriyat to be representative of the aspirations of the people of Kashmir and do not consider the government in place there as representative of their aspirations and to thumb a nose in the face of that government, you don't invite the speaker to the Commonwealth meet that you're hosting in Islamabad. No, so I think mistakes have been committed by both sides. Both sides are playing to their domestic constituency. Nawaz Sharif government is doing it and to some extent our government is doing it. What we have to do in order to keep the dialogue going, and as Ambassador Sood has pointed out, it's important for us as well as for Pakistan to keep the dialogue going because the whole world is watching us. Mind you, India is a potential nuclear flashpoint. That is what the attention of the whole world is on this subcontinent. That what's transpiring between India and Pakistan, especially when on the western borders of Pakistan, there is a very complex process underway to resolve that logjam called Afghanistan and the FATA areas, and that there's a dialogue happening and not happening. So I think that there are far too many people with stakes in this whole peace process.
Okay, Mr. Banerji, there are a lot of stakes, there's no doubt about it, everybody understands that. But the fact is this government is walking on a tightrope. Would you agree with that? There is already a lot of opposition to these talks being held at all from its own, from within its own quarter, within its own party, or people who are supporting them.
No, I don't see this as a tightrope because political, compulsions-wise, the majorities are comfortable. And as regards foreign policy, that's one area in which the leadership has been perceived to be widely successful. So where is the compulsion, except perhaps to appear in a very, macho forma to their own domestic audience. But we should grow out of it. And even if we are to focus on the substantive issues of terrorism, what we must understand is that there is a process going on in Pakistan. They are tackling some major, dangers that they have faced in their polity. From the terrorist point of view, they have turned inwards even to take on the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi. Malik Ishaq has been eliminated, and this has led to a, incident there.
Mr. Banerji, my question is this. When we are saying that these talks will be on terrorism, will Pakistan try to, what is it? Pakistan is going to talk of...
They will also...
What is Pakistan's agenda?
It will depend on what sort of, mood is set. If we are, going to attack them with various, bring out all these things about the complicity of Pakistan, they will come back with allegations of Indian complicity. Yes. But what we must understand, what I was trying to say is that Pakistan is not going to give up on the support that they extend to Lashkar or Jaish right at this moment. It won't happen now. It may happen 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line. So to expect also that, the judiciary in Pakistan will suddenly expedite the cases against the 7 accused and put back, Zakir Rahman Lakhvi into some sort of a punitive action.
You can't expect that.
It won't happen so soon.
Okay. We have Mr. Sood running out of time. Kashmir, I'm sure Pakistan would like to, talk about it. Are we ready for it?
Well, if Pakistan will raise the issue, then certainly Mr. Doval will respond and state India's position. But as I mentioned earlier, this is not a one-shot exercise. We have to see what do we extract out of this round? What is it that we project out of this round, which is seen as something positive? And therefore, how do we make sure that we are able to continue the dialogue at this level or at other levels like the DGMOs or the heads of BSF and the Pakistani border rangers and so on? Because ultimately, there is one objective which is important for us, in my view, which is to ensure that we are able to return to a situation that existed between 2003 and 2008, when there was relative peace and there weren't that many incidents of violence on the line of control. It was a positive moment, both in terms of the situation on the border and what it enabled us to do domestically to deal with other challenges, economic development, and so on.
Girish, quickly.
Girish, one short point I want to make.
Very quickly.
You see, I think that vis-a-vis India and Pakistan are living in their respective echo chambers, the whole lot of things happen on the line of control. There is aggression from both sides. But domestic population only hears of the aggression from the other side and not about our response.
It seems to be the same thing on both sides of the border.
May I say one thing? You see, the irony is that we do not deal with the United Nations Military Observers Group or India and Pakistan for good reasons, But they are dealing with them, and whatever is being reported by Anmol Gip is becoming part of the institutional memory of the United Nations.
Okay.
And I think that some thought has to be spent on this issue as well.
I'm sorry, we completely run out of time. I'm sorry, Priyanka. But the fact is that we'll have to wait and watch what will emerge out of this meeting on Monday. Hopefully there'll be no problems before that. We will wait and watch what will happen. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, the big picture, same time tomorrow.